What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Of Like Minds video podcast. We have a super special guest today and a dear friend of mine, Mr. Arnel Calvario. Arnel, thank you so much for giving us your time today, sir.
Good to be here. Super proud of you, Kevin. So happy to support.
I appreciate it so much. Arnel, just kind of getting right into it. And I just want to talk a little bit about your childhood and what it was like growing up. And you kind of grew up during the time that hip hop was birthed. So if you can just talk about like what childhood was like and what it was like growing up during that era.
So I grew up in Harbor City, which is like right in between Torrance, Wilmington, Carson, San Pedro. So it was really cool. It's like a melting pot of just so many different community members. And yeah, I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So, so my childhood literally was like, going to the park with rolled out linoleum and cardboard and, the ghetto blaster out there and people literally rocking the ciphers and battles and stuff. And it was really fun and exciting. I was really shy though. So at the time I was more like on the outside of the ciphers or the outside of the circles looking in, super fanboy. But I grew up like feeling the energy, watching, popping, locking, breaking. There were both B-boys and B-girls in my neighborhoods. And then at the family parties, my older cousins were poppers. They did like popping, waving, boogaloo, a little bit of tutting. So I love that. And then my other cousins were also into party dancing, like the social dances when I got to high school. So I got exposed to and immersed in like all of that golden era of hip hop that was super exciting, super raw. But I was really shy as a kid. So I would only dance like in my room or in the garage, and then it wasn't until like high school that, I started like, getting into dance publicly, whether it's at talent shows or at school dances and whatnot. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, one, just having such like, especially with the culture and it just being everywhere in your life, maybe if you can just talk about like what was maybe one of the first influences or one of the biggest influences, especially at that young of an age. Was it the cousins? Like, did it start at the household? Was it getting out and being in the community and seeing that? Where were those first initial influences?
Well, my first influences were in person and also on TV. So in person were my older cousins for like popping and locking and party social dance, like hip hop choreography and whatnot. And then I also, even though I didn't know they were called the Lockers back in the day, I used to watch the Lockers on Soul Train. So Soul Train, like my Saturday morning was always Saturday morning cartoons and then Soul Train right after.
Oh my God.
And then, later on in like middle school and high school, that's when MTV was really big. So then you started watching all the music videos and started getting inspired by the dancers on music videos. So it was a little bit a mixture of both, like family parties in person and, at the parks and community centers and stuff. And then also the other inspirations that you would see on TV. I would also go to Radiotron back in the day. I wasn't old enough to be there, but I would just, take the bus and head over there and sneak in. So I got to see like, Air Force crew and, members of Rocksteady crew and the Electric Boogaloos would be sometimes at these events. And then, so I didn't know the names at the time because I was young. But I got to feel the energy of it. And later on, looking back, I'm like, oh, damn, that was Don Campbell or that was Greg Campbellock Jr. or, those are the Electric Boogaloos, Mr. Wiggles. Like before I knew his name, he was my favorite. Like visually, Mr. Wiggles was like the one, So those are like all those greats were like a part of my childhood. But it wasn't until like reflecting on back later that I was like, oh, that was this pioneer, that was that pioneer, and all that stuff. Yeah.
I mean, one, I gotta know you talking about how you were, a shy kid, and I was the same growing up as well. And I just want to know like how you even had the courage to just dive into this culture. Being a shy kid, like, did anything help ease that? Just like, or did you just kind of jump into it?
I think what's interesting is like when you compare, so the hip hop era, the whole feel of hip hop was peace, love, and unity. and it was about creating something by the community for the community. So the fundamental spirit was very welcoming. And when you look at, it's different what was going on the East Coast and what was going on the West Coast. Because the East Coast was definitely, I mean, we all also know like hip hop was created by our Black brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, our Puerto Rican brothers and sisters had contributions as well. And, you know, on the East Coast, it very much was that. But on the West Coast, it was very mixed, and there were a lot of Filipinos up in the mix. So you felt very welcome. So even though maybe I wasn't like jumping in the ciphers or in it, I felt very a part of it. Like the people in the circles, the DJ, the graph artists that were just like bombing, like in the back, whether they were bombing in their books, or they were like, you know, making these amazing pieces on walls, like, or you were on the outside of the circle just giving good energy. Everyone felt like you were a part of the culture. You were welcomed in. And so even though I wasn't, the performer part of me or the freestyle part of me wasn't confident enough yet, I felt connected, you know what I mean? And it felt cool. It was what hip hop set out to do, was to basically give power to the sense of crew, right? So because the gang violence was at an all-time high, so the whole fundamental thing was a sense of belonging and amplifying the concept of crew to be so dope that that's what you wanted to be a part of. You know what I mean? You wanted to be a part of a crew. So the spirit of hip hop at that time, even though I was shy, I felt very welcomed. You know, I felt very like invited. You know what I mean? And very much a part of, which is like actually the fundamental building block for why I even created Kaba Modern, and why it was like the foundation of my belief system as to the most important part of our dance community to begin with. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And you talked about, you know, going back to playing off of you saying that you were this shy kid and you were kind of doing things more so like at home or in your room. What was it maybe like how often did you do those things? And two, like, you know, what did your family think of it? They had to have at some point noticed that, okay, like Arnel's just dancing all the time. Like, what was that reaction like?
Well, they didn't actually know I was dancing in my room. I think they thought I was playing with my GI Joes, because I usually was like playing with my GI Joes and my Transformers and whatnot. You know? They didn't really even know that I love dance so much until I was older and I was dancing at the family parties. And then, you know, all the cousins would dance for the, you know, they'd throw quarters, you know, on the dance floor, like dance,
and make you perform.
and make you perform. So I didn't really even, like, I literally didn't even dance until like really the beginning of middle school for those quarters, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I did dance though in a Filipino cultural dance company that my aunt directed and choreographed. So she was like one of the main contributors for a big dance company called Kaimana ng Lahi that's in really, really big at UCLA and, you know, in the upper LA area.
Yes.
And she said, all my cousins are going to be dancing this too. So we didn't have a choice. All my cousins learned cultural dances, which is so dope because I felt like I had a connection to my heritage too as a Filipino. And so, so it's not like my parents couldn't imagine me dancing, because it was already an expectation that I was doing these cultural dances. Yeah. It's just they didn't know I was doing hip hop, you know, until junior high, when, you know, I would kind of practice a little bit for the school dances, but especially in high school, because I was in a key club, and in key club, we started like to rep our key club. We were competing at talent shows and stuff. So,
well, if you can talk a little bit about dance kind of playing a role while growing up and being in school, so middle school, high school, at least during the time when I was growing up and dancing and teaching it may have been looked at differently, but if you can just talk about what it was like to be known as a dancer or being involved in dance at school, and what it was like in that environment.
So when I was in high school, there was no such thing as like all male. You know how they have that at Channel Island? At a lot of high schools, they have like all male dance. It was just literally like, if you wanted to perform, you could maybe put together a group for a talent show, or or in terms of like formal organization, there was cheerleading or song, you know, and at that time too, it was very like just there weren't really guys dancing as much, you know what I mean, in terms of organized, you know. But it was so cool to be able to dance that you really just prepared, you know, for the school dances to kind of show off. And
Mm.
the cool thing about dance for me is it actually helped me find my voice because, you know, prior to, like I said, I was always shy. And also obviously, you know, now I'm an out gay man, you know, but I was really confused about my sexuality. I mean, I kind of probably denied it for such a long time.
Yeah.
So when I danced though, I felt like I had a voice to express myself, you know,
Mm.
and it was the beginning of me finding my confidence because it's in baby steps. So for me to even believe I was a dancer in in high school, I was at a school dance and the best dancers in school were these group of black girls that they're like the nicest ever, but they were just so badass. And I was at school dance and they said, "Hey boy, you can dance. Come dance with us." And just that little validation. That's why like
Mhm.
I always say never underestimate, you know, the power of an encouraging word. Because
Mhm.
them just calling me a dancer in that moment help unlock me seeing it myself as a true dancer. Because before that, I saw myself as a dance fan. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I saw as like outside of the circle looking in, support the dancers. Only, you know, I would dance for myself, but I wouldn't really feel like I deserved to be called a dancer. But her validating me as that said, oh my God, I am a dancer. And even though I was still shy, so like for my high school dance group, I was the choreographer. I
Okay.
even didn't like, yeah, I never considered myself a leader. I didn't want to be a leader. Even in like formal positions, I always like being vice president or like supporting somebody else because I was
What?
still building my confidence. You know, I
Okay.
felt
Okay.
more like comfortable in the supportive role.
Mhm.
Um, so that was the baby steps. First, you know, not feeling I was cool enough to be a dancer, then being cool enough to be a dancer, but just wanting to be support role, right? And then going to UCI and now
Mhm.
being, oh, I should add another context. I'm the oldest of four siblings.
Mhm.
So I never had an older brother or older sister
Yeah.
to like say, hey, I believe in you. Hey, you can do this, you can do that, you know?
Yeah.
So when I was a freshman at UCI, I finally I joined the Filipino club and now I had all these ates and kuyas
Mm.
and people saying I believe in you. You're so talented.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, welcome to Kaba Modern, you know,
Yeah.
and I finally that is the turning point is like when I finally had mentors and kuyas and ates telling me that to believe in myself and to create
Mhm.
something, feel like I could create something, that changed me. That's when I found my voice, and I started. I changed from being on the outside of the circle and now being in the inside of the circle now.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful how you said that how dance helped you find a voice when it's an art form that you don't have to say anything to express yourself. And I just think that
Yeah.
that resonates with me so much. And one I want to know, and you kind of alluded to it already, Arnel, but what was that point for you where you were like, I'm going to pursue higher education, and you ultimately ended up going to UC Irvine? So if we can just
Mhm.
talk about what that was like. Obviously, growing up in a Filipino household, there are those high expectations. If you can maybe talk about that dynamic and
Yeah.
the reason for you ultimately choosing to pursue higher education.
Yeah, it's interesting growing up because so growing up, I always knew dance was going to be some form in my life because I loved it from such a young age. You know, I just didn't know if it was going to be fanboy or it was going to be like me doing it myself.
Hmm.
But I also knew that I was going to be a health professional at a young age because I looked up to my grandfather on my mom's side so much, and he was a surgeon general in the Philippines Army. So very prestigious at home. And we would go to the Philippines every 5 years. And so
Wow.
I just look up to him, you know, so much.
Mm.
And all my aunties and uncles on my mom's side were all health professionals. And, you know, I had like a lot of admiration for them. So I knew I was going to be a health professional that was always a part of me. Like I could always visualize like I'm going to be taking care of patients. I'm going to be working with families, but I didn't know what form it would take, So that's what I worked hard for in high school was I was going to go to college for sure. You know what I mean? I didn't know what I was going to be, you know what I mean? But I knew I was going to be a health professional of some sort, So yeah, UCI was, UCLA and UCI were my top choices in high school. So I geared for both of those and I ended up going to UCI. So yeah.
And you decided, was it biology, right?
Yeah, I was a biology major. Looking back, it was the incorrect major for me.
Why'd you say that?
Because the sciences, the part of the sciences I like are anything I can relate to the human experience. So like anatomy, physiology, psychology, right?
Yeah.
Not so much biochem, organic chemistry, you know what I mean? Like, which is like such a bulk. There's so much of the sciences that is that part. I really like the clinical part a lot, even as young. So I started out the gate at UCI really strong, like really, really amazing grades. But my interest started like really falling off when it got more into those sciencey parts of it that didn't really, where I couldn't feel like I had a connection to really helping human. I couldn't visualize how this is helping me become a better physician,
Well,
so falling off. Yeah.
How did you even navigate through those courses when you experienced a fallout well before you were going to graduate? Like, how did you even navigate through that?
It was hard. My years at UCI were the most exciting and the most life-changing and also the most struggle, both. Because I always tell people I majored in bio and Kaba Modern equally. So Kaba Modern was just vital and critical for me to develop myself as a leader, as an artist, and as a person. Just confidence-wise, it was a game changer, And Kaba Bio and the Filipino Club as well. Yeah, I started not getting great grades at all. Like by my junior year, I was on academic probation actually, and I was struggling to find my way. And I actually had a counselor who, for the positive reinforcement can be life-changing, but so can negative reinforcement. So I had a counselor who actually told me, I don't think you have what it takes to finish this degree. Like, I don't think you have what it takes.
What did that do?
Without even asking me about why my grades led to this, or, you know what I mean? Like, just not a great counselor to begin with, because, purely making these calls on numbers and not really, you know what I mean? When I look back at it now. And I was so impressionable. I said, okay, I'm going to drop out. I mean, I was at the end of my junior year and I dropped out of bio and I started over with psych, not even thinking practically that I was so close to graduating. You know what I mean? I should just finish it out and turn it around. So I started taking psychology classes and I loved it. And then I started volunteering at hospitals and I found out, and then I went on a medical mission too, to the Philippines.
Whoa.
And the medical mission I applied for and I was chosen, and I went there and I did cataract surgeries, delivered babies, tumor resections, and passed out medications in 5 different provinces in the Philippines for 2 weeks straight, 14 days straight. And I realized that I didn't like the procedural part of doing these surgeries, even though it was interesting in the beginning, but it became repetitive and almost non-human because, it's just procedure after procedure. I found myself drawn to the recovery room. I like the therapeutic process. And so what I got out of that medical mission is that I think I'm meant to be like a therapist of some sort, So when I came back, I volunteered at the rehab department and I was like, oh my God, I think it's physical therapy, So I went back to my counselor and I said, I want to go back to bio and I want to finish because I want to apply to master's program. Now that I know what I want to do, I just want to finish this degree and and get over to doing my prereqs and go for a master's
Yeah.
in physical therapy. It says too late. We can't let you back in. There's no spaces, and we can't open it back for you. It's too late. And I was devastated because all my friends are graduating. I got bad counsel from this counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I went to go see another counselor, and she said, "I believe in you." I told her my whole story. So I believe in you. You can do it. What you need to do is you need to add every class as if you were a bio major by add card, and basically ask each professor to let you in.
Yeah.
And then get good grades so that I can authorize you to come back, and then you can graduate on time with your friends. And I did that. I added each class,
Oh,
7 classes in a row, begged professors to let me have a spot in their class, aced all those classes, ended up graduating just in time. I mean, I was definitely a 5-year grad, but I ended up finishing it like right in the nick of time by pure determination, you know? And I already knew at that point, I'm not taking the MCATs, I'm not going to medical school, but I think I'm meant for something in the therapy field. And so once I had my degree, I applied for a job at Children's Hospital LA.
Mm-hmm.
It was a physical therapy, occupational therapy aid position where you're helping both departments.
Mm-hmm.
And it was there that I discovered that my true calling was occupational therapy. And everything worked out as it was supposed to be because I took prerequisites, I aced all my prerequisites, and then I went for the top program in the country, which is USC in occupational therapy. And I wrote this long personal statement about that journey of finding your true calling and how when you do, that's when you perform at your true capability. And it matched my grades. And they basically told me, they took me based on my personal statement. And I got into the top program in the country. And then I aced it. I was president of USC's OT program.
Oh my God.
And then they actually, when I graduated, they opened up the doctorate program exactly when I graduated. And so they said they want me in that inaugural class.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up negotiating my my tuition. So I said, I'll do it if you pay for half my tuition.
Wow. That's amazing.
And they said, we'll pay for half your tuition if you do it on this topic, your doctorate on this topic. And I said, yeah, that's what I wanted to do it on anyway. So the universe and God provides when you're true to who you are, where you follow a calling that's beyond others' expectations and beyond a archaic expectation that you may have placed upon yourself that no longer serves you, you know? So yeah, super blessed. And yeah, that whole journey was really crazy. So, I mean, I went from the excitement of Kaba Modern to oh, I may not graduate. And I might have just wasted all my parents' money they invested on me, you know?
Yeah.
To by pure determination, just making it happen and then coming out on the other end in the end, you know?
Absolutely. And we're going to get into a little bit deeper into, your tenure at USC, but just kind of going back to, while you're figuring this out at UCI and you found Kaba Modern, if you could just talk about what was the inspiration and motivation behind creating that space?
So the sense of belonging that I had from hip hop culture in general, and also when I did the talent, I put my group together for Key Club for the talent shows. That excitement of working together towards a common goal to rep your school was just so that adrenaline rush was like none other. I think that I always liked the collaborative process, the challenges of it and the excitement of it, you know? So I joined the Filipino club right away to learn because I love the cultural dances. I grew up doing it. But because I grew up in hip hop culture that included so many Pinoys and Pinays, when it was called the Filipino American Culture Night, I was like, well, the Filipino American part of that is hip hop for me,
Mm,
you know?
yeah.
So, I asked the president if we could have that in the culture night, just a small section, because there was the rural dance suite, the Igorot dance suite, Maria Clara, and the Muslim. So the four main styles dance suites, and then of course there were skits and commercials and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I was like, there should be hip hop in there too to capture the American experience. And the president mocked me and said, "Yeah, you should just create your own." But I didn't catch the sarcasm, so I ended up just creating it. you know, and it ended up becoming the Kaba Modern Dance Suite. So the traditional dances and the modern take, or the modern dances, not technically like contemporary or modern, but
Mhm.
more like modern as the adjective, like this is the modern styles, and they called us Kaba Modern for short because our name was just too long,
Yeah.
And I constructed Kaba Modern from the beginning as a bridge between the foundation style, so popping,
Mhm.
locking, breaking, married with the energy of party dancing, because
Mhm.
those are different like eras,
Yes.
of dance. And but I wanted to combine what I looked up to with what I did, because what I looked up to was popping, locking, breaking.
Yeah.
What I did when I finally danced in public was party dancing. You know what I mean? Hip hop
Mhm.
choreography. That was like when I finally had courage to dance. So I wanted all of it to be like the identity of Kaba Modern. But the foundation, we were never meant to be a crew, because we weren't going to battle other crews that were existing
Mhm.
at the time. And we weren't a dance company, because we were literally practicing in parking garages. We were
Yeah.
practicing in the parking lot right behind Cross Cultural Center. That was our first spot. So we're a dance family. That's what we are. We're a dance family. That's our identity. When
Yeah.
people ask you, what are you? We're a dance family,
Yeah.
And that was the culture at that time, because after Kaba Modern was created, all the Filipino clubs the very next year started having a modern section.
Mm.
Barkada Modern, Samahang Modern, Pack Modern,
Mhm.
right? And we all identified ourselves as dance families. Like that was the culture, that these were collectives of dancers that wanted a sense of belonging, that wanted to express for each other, you know? Um, so super exciting, super hype. Um, yeah, and it just kind of exploded from there. Like the community was formed after that. Yeah.
And what were the rehearsals like in terms of knowing at this point? I feel like the dance families were more focused on the foundation
Yeah.
of where hip hop came from, as opposed to now we kind of see a little bit more people expressing their own movement.
Yeah.
But just talking a little bit about, what it was like, just a typical rehearsal, and
Hmm.
really diving into these foundational trainings that, we don't see as much anymore. If you can share
Yeah.
any thoughts on that.
So one thing to keep in mind is like none of the hip hop styles were in studios at all. So the only way you learn anything is you had to learn it from your homie. You had to learn it from, someone at the park. So these modern group, these dance families were basically teaching each other what they had learned from their communities, and very much there were no mirrors, so you
Mm-hmm.
had to teach each other, and the way you clean is through each other. So
Mm,
when you perform, it's the concept also of interdependence versus independence,
mm,
right? Where you, just like in the Philippines, in the province, if someone doesn't have enough rice, it's okay. Your neighbor is, if they find out, they're just going to share with you. Everyone relies on each other for survival
yeah.
and to make it and be happy. Same thing with these dance groups. You relied on each other, one, to teach each other, and you relied on each other to like perfect it too. So you clean each other. You're outside. There's no mirrors. If you want to clean, you trust the leader that their eyes are gonna like be able to let you know what you need to do. And you have to think about not just yourself, because there are no mirrors. You're looking at what everyone else is doing while you're doing what you're doing. So there's a
Yeah.
connection, a
Yeah.
connectedness that's like so deep, and that's why like even in the beginning there was no competitions. So you're really
Hmm.
working all year long for that one performance for culture night.
Yeah.
And you're repping for each other. So because your family members are going to watch you
Yeah.
and you want, but it's more than just yourself. It's like together, we have to work together with everyone. So that teamwork, that like the true Kababayan spirit of, we are we're fellowship and we're working together for this product is like, was very much the impetus for all these groups. Of course, performing once a year wasn't enough, which is why later on, like
Hmm.
when car show promoters and club promoters are like, hey, we want you to perform here, or hey, we have a dance competition at our car show, we jumped at those opportunities. They're like, oh, we get to perform more than once a year. This is dope. Let's do
Mm,
it.
yeah.
And then you started preparing more sets, and then these these like small competitions that weren't thrown by us in the beginning were, kind of there. But eventually, then you had the competitions circuit be created, and then that also took it another level up in terms of like what the culture kind of felt like, because now you're like, ooh, now we have to get competition ready.
Yeah, and I was just gonna ask you that when you started at Kaba initially, like you had said, the environments are different from where it is now. I mean, you're literally dancing in parking lots, on the streets, on campus. You're not in a studio with mirrors. Also, that reliance on your family members and your teammates to look as good as you can. So many different variables are changing and evolving, and a big one is now you have competitions to look forward to. Did that ever change the rehearsal space? Did that change the culture of the team? What did you kind of notice as those opportunities started to arise?
In the beginning, when it was just the culture nights, everyone was fine with just practicing outside with no mirrors. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And it was raw and fun. And was it clean? Like looking back at those like VHS tapes or whatever. Um, but maybe not as clean, but it had a rawness to it that was just like so. It was basically hip hop foundation. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
You had to vibe off the energy, which was so fun. But yeah, when the first competition was Vibe, because I was complaining about these car shows, and not that they were bad, but they just weren't enough
Yeah.
for what I envisioned, for what we want. I wanted like the PCN experience, but
Yeah.
at a dance event, by judged by dancers and leaders we respect, versus random promoters. So my roommate needed an event, and I wanted a competition, and so that's how Vibe was created, just from a conversation between my roommates.
Hmm.
And Vibe was the very first opportunity for people to be like, oh wow, we have an actual stage and we have an
Yeah.
actual audience. And I think once we had that, we started um, hip hop dancers and these dance families were still not embraced by the universities. So we did not have even spaces on universities. So you would just hope that somebody on the team is a dance major. So for us, hope someone from the dance team, one of our dancers was a dance major, and then we would like use their access to get into one of the dance studios.
Hmm.
We would make the routines and then use the hour or 2 hours we have mirrors to clean ourselves. And then
Hmm.
that's it.
Yes.
That's it. Like, you know what I mean? You have very limited. So it was cool. It was cool to be able to like see the jump. Um, but I think it wasn't until there were like more dance competitions and it started to become a lot more seen in terms of like value, and also the enormity of it as audiences started growing bigger at these events, that dance studios are now like, maybe we should let them teach at our studios. You know what I mean?
Mm, yeah.
And once like we started infiltrating the dance studios, that's when I think teams started like being able to clean more, and there were more competitions to prepare for. So people were now starting to use studio spaces, whether they rent it or, um, you know, whatnot. And also now that we were in the studios, even the North Hollywood studios like Millennium
Hmm.
um, and The Edge,
Yeah.
Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah.
People were like also seeing those as like, oh, that's probably where I want to go next after I do the college experience, if I want to be a professional dancer in the industry.
Yeah.
I'm going to start like taking class over there. So things were starting to grow and change pretty much like once we started going into the studios more.
Absolutely. And you obviously, helping create Vibe and kind of when was the first year of Vibe? And two, if you can talk a little bit about the evolution of, from the very first Vibe to where it is now and seeing how big and where, at Segerstrom now, like like just seeing that evolution.
Yeah, Vibe was created in 1995. Yeah, so this year was actually supposed to be the 25th anniversary, which was
Yep.
like super sad because
Yeah.
we were like, wow. I mean, 2020 really was going to be so many anniversaries
Yeah.
for a lot of
Yeah.
competitions. Because Fusion, I think, was also going to be that was going to be their 20th anniversary. And
Oh wow.
yeah, a lot of competitions were having 20th and 25th anniversaries because that was the era, 20, 25 years ago was when the competition started popping up, you know.
Yeah.
But the two most coveted ones out of all the competitions are Vibe and Body Rock,
Yep.
right? And the
Hmm.
reason why that is because Vibe and Body Rock were created by dancers.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so it had the intention, just how it's shaped and how it's run is in the minds of how do we serve the dancers well, you know? And so people all around the world, even though there's so many competitions, the ultimate, the most revered are those two ones. Because obviously Body Rock was created by Anna,
Hmm.
who obviously is another like such an amazing leader, amazing good soul, one of my closest friends.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
and yeah, Vibe was created, by Kaba Modern, not by me necessarily. We were brainstorming as my roommate Joseph,
Hmm.
but there were Kaba Modern leaders involved that were in that fraternity that helped shape it for years and years and years and years,
Yeah.
and so it always had a very community feel to it. Yeah.
It's just amazing to see like an idea that you had so long ago and that you are obviously collaborated with some close friends, and to see where it's taken not only just you, but even seeing like our community. And one now kind of getting back to when you decided to pursue that doctorate and you went to USC. One, how the hell did you even balance all of this, Arnell? And two, obviously you had a couple years in between. So maybe just taking us about like what else that you were kind of doing in between graduating from UC Irvine and then ultimately going to USC and then pursuing that doctorate.
Well, first of all, yeah, I think it's important for people to take the time they need to figure out what they want to do post grad.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my friends who right out of college went right into careers or went right into graduate programs they were expected to.
Yeah.
Um, Ended up being like having other mental health issues, depression, just different issues, different health issues because they didn't end up doing what they really love. They ended up doing what they were expected to do. Um, when I graduated from college, and I started that OTA job,
Yep.
PTOTA job. I had like 2.5 years to really make sure,
Mm.
that this is what I wanted to do. And that's what I always recommend to people. You spend most of your waking hours of your life working.
Yeah.
So it's worth taking the time to invest in making sure it's something that you're going to want to spend your life doing,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're happy in what you do, then you're happy in everything else, how you treat yourself, how you treat others, right? So I think it's so key. Whenever people graduate and they're like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm like, it's okay. You're like
Mm.
you're in your early 20s. That's the 20s are about exploration and discovery.
Yeah.
Those are the times that you're supposed to shadow different people to see if when it maybe a career is going to be a spark for you. Ask questions, watch documentaries, just go out there and ask questions, explore, discover. I always tell people take all the time you need to find something you love, and then when you do love it, do the work that it requires to excel. You know. And so for me, taking that 2.5 years was critical because if I rushed, I probably would have been a physical therapist and that would have been fine, but it wouldn't have been the immense joy I have now where I not only love my job, I envision retiring in it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I love my job every day. I'm so grateful for my career choice. And it's broad enough that I even see myself, I can pivot at any time,
Yeah.
because the philosophy of this field is aligned so much with what I think God created me to do.
Mm.
So, I'm so glad that I took the time versus rushing because of expectations or because of timelines, you know? And then I also am of the belief that we're not, all also not one thing. You know what I mean? I always say the same quote because it's a quote I believe in. Like one of my golden rules, it's like, or my thought is that we're all like a brilliant mosaic of many extraordinary parts.
Mm.
So we're not just one thing. We're a combination of a lot of amazing things. So we should never make our life all one thing, right?
Mm.
So going to occupational therapy school, if all I made myself was just an occupational therapy student and I ignore all the other parts of me that can contribute to my health and well-being, I
Yeah.
would burn out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, like most students, like they work out or they run or they write or, you know what I mean? They read maybe, you
Yeah.
know? For me, it's always been dance. Dance has always been a part of me. It brings me joy. It brings me balance. And so I don't think I could have gotten through my master's and my doctorates if I didn't have some form of dance in my life. And I don't think I could do
Mm.
my dance either if I didn't fulfill this part of me that always wanted to be a health professional. I didn't follow the path that someone told me I should be. I actually figured out the right combination of things that
Mm.
makes me extraordinary, right? That makes my path unique.
Yeah.
So I'm not one or the other. When people ask me, what's your career? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a dance educator and I'm an occupational therapist. And they're like, oh, what's your day job? I'm like, I'm an occupational therapist and I'm a dance educator.
Yeah.
There's no day job. There's no main career. The combination of both is like what my career is.
Mm.
And if I were to pick one over the other, it would be to deny what I think God created me to be. You know what I mean? God created me to be many different things. And of course we have our other roles too. Like I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm an
Mhm.
uncle. I'm a partner. I'm a friend, I'm a mentor, I'm a mentee. There are many things. But in terms of like my career, I'm definitely it's equal parts dance and health professional for sure.
I think it's so important that that is heard, and for the viewers and whoever's tuning in, just hearing that Arnaud, I think is amazing. I think getting I'm guilty of this too. I think getting so in love with dance and kind of having the blinders to almost not seeing other things and being like, I'm a dancer and that's what I'm gonna do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you saying, that there's so many dancers and we have so many friends that they could be so many things if they wanted to be. And it's more so just like being open to that option. And I just think that it's so important that you said that, and I just hope that whoever's tuning in can really just like let that resonate. Um,
I mean, when we think about the pandemic, right, brother? Like, right? Okay, so like if a person only saw themselves only as an a dance entertainer, right? That's all they saw themselves as. Of course, they're going to be depressed in this moment of the pandemic when entertainment and industry got shut down
mhm.
for months, right?
Yeah.
Um, but if they saw themselves as a dance entertainer and something else and maybe something else, because they're a combination. They have many talents. They have
Yeah.
many interests. If they saw themselves as a whole person, then yeah, maybe having one part of you shut down won't be as devastating, right? Right. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think that's the problem is I think life is unpredictable, you know what
Mm.
I mean? And so when you limit yourself to one identity, to only one, and you only cultivate one part of yourself, you're denying your extraordinary brilliance and your other pathways to being healthy throughout your life journey. You know what I mean? When you embrace the ability to be many different things, you can move through life, through the ebbs and flows of life,
Hmm.
more gracefully. You know what I mean? So I always encourage people that. That's why like I'm really big into even mission statement writing, because when we
Hmm.
write our personal mission statements, we start to identify what are those parts, you know what I mean? What are those parts that of who I am, you know?
Yeah.
And then you start to realize, yeah, I guess I have a foundation principle or these values, but I'm actually more than these things. The values maybe brings it together, but I am more than one thing, you know?
Yeah.
I really think about it, I'm more than one thing. And then you're gonna be okay for that.
Absolutely. And you are definitely an extraordinaire in that sense. And I've taken some of those classes and during my tenure at Beyond Culture Shock LA and getting reconnected with you and kind of seeing that and being like, man, like Arnel really knows his stuff. If, especially during this time and especially for artists that are maybe, trying to figure out how to have that awareness of, okay, what else can I provide that will also be moving for me as well, rather than just getting a job for the sake of getting a job. Maybe if you can offer some, what would you say to someone who's maybe looking for, like, how do they self-assess? How does one even start to figure out what they want to do? If you have any suggestions or tips or words of encouragement.
Yeah, I think I that's why I really think like what's interesting is like during this time, like we a lot of people were really depressed because of the limited ability to have freedom to move about wherever we want, right? And
Hmm.
so the movement part of ourselves was very stifled.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people started like settling into being okay with it when they realized this is an opportunity to unlock our minds, though,
Hmm.
and our spirits, right?
Yeah.
And to put thought into like what is my mission in life? You know, what are my values? What's my biography right now? You know, maybe I can
Yeah.
look back at that now and like start to really think about who am I in this moment. And then now as we're being awoken up by so many issues like Black Lives Matter or
Hmm.
the Me Too movement or LGBTQIA liberation,
Hmm.
um, we all different. We're all different from who we were at January 2020,
Yeah.
right? And it's such a good thing though, because
Yes.
what it is just calling us to like look at what needs to be healed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What areas we can be proud of, and also what areas we can grow in. You know, so
Mm.
I think right now in this moment, it's yeah, there are a lot of things that suck. There are, you know what I mean, that are challenging, and there's a lot of loss. But we also have a lot of opportunity to rebuild, to grow, to have meaningful growth, to redefine or maybe even just solidify who we are and who we want to be.
Yeah.
Um, and that's such a good thing, because when things return to quote unquote normal, you
Yeah.
know, whenever we get back to being free to move about as we wish, um, the hope is that we are going to do better and be better, you know, and maybe we're
Yes.
going to be more connected to the things we truly love, you know. Maybe we're going to the things that we there are things that I sat on for years and years and years, like my leadership course, that I've been wanting to do, but I've just been so distracted by my service to others that I never even got to like now think about my passion projects that I want to, you know, they're just kind of been dusty in the back shelf for maybe like 15 years, to
Yeah.
be honest, you know. I got to dust those off, and, you know, I had to say like, oh, well, you know, I don't have any of all my traveling gigs, all 15 of them are all canceled. So, you know, what other things have I always wanted to do that I think, you know, now I have the time to do it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like doing that program and paying attention to things that that I think I've skills that I've developed that I haven't even paused enough to like notice,
Mm.
um, has completely birthed or expanded the things I already do, you know, in a meaningful way.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And another thing too, Arnell, is I feel so much for those that are graduating high school and going to college and that experience, kind of virtual graduation of high school, and then for those that are pursuing higher education, not really having the full experience, with social distancing and probably not even being able to live on campus. So I think just kind of knowing that, and there's a lot of uncertainty in what has gone in today's, youth that are kind of growing up. But I want to go back to you and you finishing your doctorate at USC in 2002. And if you can talk a little bit about navigating postgrad, accumulating all this knowledge, accumulating all of these accolades and things, and you can do anything, you can be adaptable, you can kind of put on different hats. What was it like initially navigating that postgrad life?
Oh my gosh. So 2000, I graduated my master's in 2001, and then
2001,
I
okay.
graduated my doctorates in 2002.
Cool.
So I had enough like elective credits to graduate my doctorates in like 1 year.
Wow.
So dope. But 2001 to 2002 was the hardest year of my life because I was a new grad. So first year occupational therapist
Mm,
and still trying to find your way and your confidence as a therapist while doing my doctorate program and still dancing. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, so time wise, it was so crazy balancing all my time, that was very challenging. If looking back, I would have definitely kept the dance. I love I don't have any regrets about doing the doctorate program, but I probably would have just worked part-time or per diem, you know what I mean?
Mm,
Because that was when I was actually stretched to my full limits, and I probably needed to experience that to know where I don't function well.
mm,
That's where I hit my absolute workload limit. And
yeah.
I knew at that time, like, I can't live like this for the rest of my life. So whenever I hit a threshold, even close to that feeling of that 1 year, I already know I need to start shaving things off.
Yeah.
But 2002 to 2003, however, now I got my doctorate under my belt.
Hmm.
Um, and I had actually quit Culture Shock LA because
Hmm.
philosophically, I just wanted something different. And Culture Shock LA in the early 2000s was dope, but it was very much industry more than community. But in 2003, the executive director of Culture Shock LA got pregnant and moved to New York and offered me the executive director position.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, man, everything I grew up in, from being a Boy Scout to Key Club to um, helping create this community, with Kaba Modern, like, I think I'm ready to lead a nonprofit,
Wow.
Culture Shock LA,
Yeah.
and I can combine everything I love, which is community service, hip hop culture, education, and still perform with like the people I love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the part of me that did competitions, I outgrew that. I didn't want to do competitions anymore. So
Mm,
this was perfect for me. Like, everything in its divine timing happened. And now I was a second year occupational therapist, so I felt more like confident. So I
yeah.
did have a tough year before, but the second year after that was like, now I was in my sweet spot because I
Mm,
had all the excitement of, I had a dream team of directors because I got to choose who I wanted to be directors with me.
okay.
And I got to build Culture Shock LA from scratch and really return it to its outreach and education route, and
Mm,
also train as true hip hop artists with, like, basically building not only the movement, but the knowledge. Um, so that was like exciting, fun times. Everything was stimulating because I was growing as an occupational therapist, and then I was growing as a dance leader too.
mm. And it's been like that ever since. I mean, I was on the team a few years ago, and it's in terms of still giving back, and you're talking about still being in touch with those roots and giving back to the community and education and true education,
Yeah.
not as just dancers, but also as people. And I've always appreciated that for you.
The
And
culture is like just such good souls, like people who are really dope dancers but have a sense of wanting to do what we do for not just ourselves, for a cause bigger than ourselves.
mm,
So you're just around all these good humans, and as you grow through life, you have also peer support. It's just so
yeah,
dope. I love
absolutely.
it.
Well, was there ever a point, Arnell, where in terms of because we're always going to be a dancer, right? It's going
Yeah.
to live with us forever. Was there
Yeah.
ever that point where you stopped in terms of performing or being on stage per se? I know you still
Yeah.
actively teach and you're very much in the thick of things, but in terms of like, I am performing, I am getting ready for this set, I'm going through a specific regimen. When was that? When did that kind of stop for you?
So like your career, you can be in a career, but your relationship to that career is always going to change.
Mm,
That makes sense.
yeah.
So with occupational therapy, like I started off in the hospital setting because I wanted to be around all different diagnoses. I wanted to learn and have all these other therapists around me. But, you know, after working at Children's Hospital LA from my 8 years to a therapist, new therapist, after working there for 11 years, I was starting to get bummed out by the oncology kiddos that were dying. And I already knew like my soul probably couldn't take that long term.
Yeah.
So I actually changed to school district life where I have summers off and I have winter breaks and I'm still making a
Mm.
difference, but no one's dying. You know what I mean? And I had a strong interest in the autistic population. So kids with autism. So that was such a good transition for me, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with dance too. Like, yeah, there was a season I loved to compete at talent shows in high school. Then in college, yeah, now that there's all these dance competitions, I did love the excitement of dance competitions, you know?
Yeah.
The spirit of dance competitions was unique too, because people are like, oh, why would anyone want to do like choreographed dances that everyone looks the same? It's not about necessarily the product. It was about the experience of working together on a common goal and then doing well for each other. That's the high.
Yeah.
That's why competitions were exciting for me. Or because
Mm.
like, this is my family, I'm repping my family, and you know, we're gonna do so well for each other, and that's exciting when you succeed, you know? But yeah, then, you know, I didn't, and also one thing too is like, I've never been a front and center performer, you know, like I've always like, just like the experience of sharing something with people. So even though, yeah, my relationship to dance changed. So first, you know, like talent shows, then competitions. And I was like, I don't feel like competing anymore, but I still want to tell stories through benefit shows, you know,
Mm.
school assemblies, you know, community performances. So I still had like that performance part of me that evolved from competition to now still performing with a purpose, or for education. And then, yeah, then a part of me at some point was like, you know what, like, I don't like performing as much anymore. I just like to perform for special occasions now.
Mm.
Now I'm more like, I love the educational aspect of it. So I like teaching workshops. I like encouraging like molding other educators and other leaders now,
Yeah.
or being a part of their journey and mentoring people. Like I enjoy that more. And when I dance now, it's interesting because I went through a phase of loving choreographed art. And then I came full circle to now being like that kid in my room freestyling. That's where I am now too. I love freestyling now. I don't
Yeah.
like battling. I've never been a battler, but I love ciphers. I love jams. I love house parties, you know? I
Yeah.
still love that energy. So I've come full circle all the way around in terms of dance to the freedom. But I don't think I'll ever be on the outside looking in. I'll now forever be, you know, a part of the circle, you know, because I know I belong now.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And you are definitely a purist in terms of being an educator and a teacher, and that just that job is so selfless and so giving. Is there maybe a certain thing that stands out to the job of, you know, a lot of people are like, well, being a teacher it's so much of giving, and maybe you can talk about like some of the things that are satisfying or make it like this is why I do this. Like what exactly like is so fulfilling for you being an educator and teacher? And that's just a part of what you do, but what about that specifically?
I think when it comes to education, I think it's teaching things that that you feel is your unique contribution to the world, right? So I think if I forced myself to be like a dance choreography teacher, I probably wouldn't like it as much because there's so many people that are good at it right now, right? But for me, I love teaching like roots before branches, which is like the history, because I know I'm one of the few dance educators out there who lived through it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Who
Very
lived
important.
through all the eras from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, who's been a part of the you know, the street dance and club style world and dancing in the parks, and to dancing at these competitions and being a part of the birth of this community,
Yeah.
I know I have something unique, like a unique story to share. So I love Roots Before Branches because I think that's like something that I can uniquely offer the world, you know? And also same thing with my leadership tools for the dance leader. I know that that's also a unique skill set that I've gained from my mentors and also from my mistakes and my successes as a leader, that I can help other young leaders who are aspiring to do something for who they serve as well. So I think what it is in terms of like teaching, it's teaching things that you're interested in and also that you uniquely can offer the world. That's
Mm.
when it keeps it exciting and fresh. I think we burn out when we're like kind of just teaching what's already out there and we're like, I don't know, like there's just so much of this already and I'm doing the same thing. It's more like taking the time to find your unique offering and then fully nourishing that. So it's
Mm.
always fresh and exciting for you. And when it's fresh and exciting for you, the people you serve feed off of that energy, you know? So, and I can also tell when people do it for money and not for the joy of it. You can
Yeah.
just, because to be an educator, you have to really to be a good educator, you have to be really interested in the experience of your students.
Absolutely. And honestly,
Right?
every time it's on camera, off camera, behind the scenes, every time that I talk to Dance about you, I feel like even when I text you or we message, I feel I can feel that beaming energy of just being excited to be like, all right, Kevin, I'm about to teach you something. And so you're definitely, obviously, like you said, someone that has lived through it and you've experienced it and it's been your life. Recently, earlier this year, I know that we got rid of the term urban, and I wanted to know your thoughts on
Yeah.
just that term first of all, and
Yeah.
then two, what the impact was and the power of not taking it back, but just really like, hey, like this isn't something to be taken and
Mhm.
branched out as something else, but just
Yeah.
the relationship of urban and finally removing it and calling it what it is.
Yeah. So like what we mentioned earlier, like the foundation of this community was definitely hip hop for sure. You know what I mean? Because it was 1992 and that's like still the golden age of like party dancing and or hip hop choreography, hip hop freestyle. That's like Elite Force and Mop Tops paving the way for all of us, you know what I mean, for that movement.
Yeah.
And all of us just taking that and running with it. You know, that was the spirit. And so the root of our community is definitely hip hop, you know. But around 2005, that was, we already had lots of competitions, and that was the birth of like social media. That's when
Mhm.
like first my first Friendster, then MySpace, then Facebook, and then YouTube,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
so what ended up happening is when you have this explosion of people having access to each other, you also have an explosion of teams. Because that was also when now a zillion teams started being birthed.
Mhm.
Like our community was already growing fast, but there was an explosion and they were
Yeah.
getting younger. And now you also had the high school teams, not just the college teams. You had the high school teams.
Yeah.
There were a lot of all male competition teams. There are a
Yeah.
lot of community teams. And so this explosion was like exciting, but I feel like the growth also, there wasn't enough mentorship and education to match the expansion, the rate of expansion, you know? So, and also they were getting younger. So a lot of people weren't even born during that era when, they weren't even born in the 70s or the 80s or even
Yeah.
the 90s, some of them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was, the good thing is, the cool thing was I did like that now people were drawing inspirations from different art forms, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like contemporary, true modern dance,
Mhm.
um, even like club styles, house,
Mhm.
locking, all these different art forms, whacking, Vogue. And so the presentation was starting to look different as well. You know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
choreograph um, expressions were looking different because people were pulling from whatever inspired them. And that's a cool thing. But I don't think people also were feeding themselves with the knowledge to even know the art forms that they're drawing inspiration from, right? They didn't necessarily know this art form is called this. These are the foundations. This is the vocabulary. This is the history. This is the essence of these art forms. They were just taking drawing inspiration and then trying to create something that was like unique movement, which was still cool. I love it. I loved it. But when you look at the landscape, you started just seeing like the dance competitions were starting to look different, you know? It didn't necessarily, there were teams that literally I would look at them and like they have no hip hop foundation at all. Like hip hop is not their foundation. You know what I mean? They're like drawing their styles from different art forms that are also dope. But there are teams that were showing up at competitions who are like, wow, there's not a single, I don't see that much hip hop in that piece at all.
Yeah.
And they're still welcome because these are dance competitions, not hip hop dance competitions.
Yeah.
You know, vibe and fusion. There were dance competitions. They were not necessarily labeled hip hop competitions, especially at that point anymore. Yeah. So as people were traveling around the world, like Sean Evaristo and Mike Song, and they were interfacing with the mob, you know, people like Buddha Stretch and Link and all these other amazing progressors and pioneers. There's a lot of called into question of like what your community is doing is not hip hop, or that's watered down hip hop, or you know, whatever. And so there was a term urban dance that we did not create. That was not something that was fabricated by California. You know what I mean? Yeah. That was a term that was already existent in the studios. We didn't know why, but they were there. And dance events all across the world were calling their events also urban dance or urban dance camp. You know what I mean? Like, because people of that generation, like Shauna Varisto, Mike Song, you know, Lal Beniga, are so respectful of hip hop culture. When people from that culture were saying like, what you're doing is not hip hop or questioning it, they're like, well, maybe we should use the urban dance thing because it's already out there and we can not disrespect the purity of what hip hop is and hip hop isn't, and find this new term that maybe is a little bit broader. You know what I mean? Because there was contemporary mixed in. Like when you look at Mari, like Mari Madrid, like she has a lot of contemporary influence, and it's amazing. Like you could see hitting in there, hip hop in there for sure, but there's also an amazing contemporary side to her, you know. Or even like Chris Martin, there is some contemporary mixed with b-boying, and then you know what I mean. It's like he's so brilliant in what he does. It's clearly like has many different influences. And so a lot of people from through the late 2000s. All the way up until now, we're starting to use this term as a safer lane to kind of sit in. And that's kind of, again, one of the great things about like the Black Lives Matter movement is it was now exposed that urban music was used to basically not give credit to Black music or even hip hop music. They were using urban as a replacement term for that genre. And that's the same thing what happened in the studios. We found out that the studios were using urban dance because they didn't feel comfortable putting hip hop in their studios. You know, we had no idea that is the origin of it. And so that is why in June, I had conversations with Monsell Durden, who's like another amazing inspirational dance educator. I met him through a mutual friend, and he's from the Mop Tops as well. And he had explained to me, you know, the negative aspects of urban dance. We got together quickly within weeks. Got a bunch of people together, you know, Keone and Mari, Bam Martin, you know, Lal Beniga, Sora, Sean Maristo, of course, Mike, Anthony, all of them basically came together. They invited me as a guest as well. And we talked about, Lando was in there too, June Picato. We also asked Tony Czar what his thoughts were as well. And we all decided, you know what, for ourselves, we need to make a stance. So we had a solidarity statement. We posted it on Instagram at the same time in June and basically said, we will no longer be using urban dance. And that's absolutely there. When you know better, you do better, you know?
Mm,
And I'm so proud of that because now we're returning it back to where it started, which is honoring art forms for what they really are, and
absolutely.
supporting this generation who wants to learn. You know, this generation actually wants to learn the history, which is so exciting.
Hmm.
They ask for it. They want to know it. They're activated. You know, they want to know the root, and that's super cool. So right now, like we're just saying, like, you know, people who felt, you know, comfortable with the urban dance theme, it's like, no, keep doing what you do. Like your style of choreography or your style is uniquely yours. But within your choreography or within your freestyle, mention what the building blocks are. What art forms are the building blocks
Mm,
of your choreography,
yeah.
of your style? I mean, of your freestyle. And then just take the 1 minute at the beginning of your class or the 1 minute at the beginning of your rehearsal to let your dancers know, hey, I'm teaching an advanced dance choreography class, and my style of this class is built on the building blocks of hip hop, house, and crump. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Then one, you're giving credit to where like who created those art forms, and you're also leading your students to be able to like, hey, if I want to master his choreography, I need to study those art forms so that I could like smash when he teaches his choreography. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
And we're really staying in that lane of appreciation now versus appropriation.
Absolutely. And you hit it right on the head, Arnell. And, talking about, labeling things for what they are. And you're constantly working, not just, for you, but for the community and for others. And if you can just talk a little bit about the day to day and kind of what you've been up to, what you're currently working on, especially amidst COVID and being in this pandemic. There's a lot of adjustments and pivots we've had to make. So just kind of taking us through what you've been currently up to.
Yeah, so you know, I've been doing my occupational therapy job. I work for the school district, so I'm off during the summers, which has been a blessing. So during this summer, usually I go the comfortable route, which is I work. It's optional, but I work summer school,
Mm.
and I don't necessarily enjoy it. That's something I fell into. It pays well, you know. It's guaranteed work during the summer, so I usually do summer school in July.
Okay.
But we had no. So I decided I didn't want to work summer school this because the virtual therapies have been challenging, and last year pivoting into virtual was so challenging for me that I needed a summer off. But I didn't also have my summer gigs that I always do. I usually travel a lot for my
Mm.
teaching gigs
Yeah.
and teaching competitions during the summer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I launched my leadership tools for the dance leader,
Mm-hmm.
and I basically had leaders from over the country apply for this program, and
Yeah.
I ran 4 cohorts, you know, and I named them Alpha, Beta, Delta, and Gamma,
Mm-hmm.
and I had leaders from New Zealand, Australia, Philippines, Singapore, Indonesia, India, China, Canada, Mexico, Trinidad. You know, it's like people from all over the world that wanted to take this program to further develop their leadership skills so they could serve their communities. And that was one of the most rewarding, amazingly enjoyable experiences I've had in my entire dance career. And something I'll probably be doing now for moving forward because I see now the necessity for leaders, especially young leaders coming up, to be supported in finding their unique offerings to the world and also understanding their areas for growth and understanding their strengths, you know, so that when they build their leadership teams, they can know what to look out for, you know. Super rewarding, super exciting. I freaking love it. And again, it's one of those things that I feel like God universe, you
Mm.
know, gave me this opportunity and I went for it. And I earned literally 5 times the amount I would earn working summer school.
Mm.
And I just finally shed it. I knew it for a long time. I didn't want to work summer school anymore,
Yeah.
you know, but I was afraid to let it go because I was like, I want to have a job for sure. Now I'm like, no, I need to trust in that I have a unique offering to the world and I just need to package it well. And then that can be so much more fruitful. So yeah, I'm grateful that I had something to pivot to. And this summer, I saw a lot of other people doing it as well for their own unique offerings. Like Sora has an amazing program.
Mm-hmm.
Donna Aristo has an amazing program. Larkin and Chris have an amazing program.
Yeah.
Andy J, you know, like all these people started like really thinking about what is my unique offering to the world and how can I package it in a way that it serves other well. And we're
Mm-hmm.
all thriving. And so I also want to let people know that the path of a dancer is multi. It's not one thing. There
Yeah.
is the tour life, there is the industry life, but um, this pandemic has really opened people's eyes to the stability and lucrative option of being an educator. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you were an educator always, you didn't have to give up your job as an educator. You just had to turn it virtual, and you could still succeed.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a viable pathway for people. If you want, you know, education is a viable pathway for dancers. If that's your genius, you know, if that's your true what you enjoy. So that's what's really cool about dance. There's so many aspects. Even like this, having a podcast. Like I know dance is always going to be a part of your life, Kevin, because I saw you as a very young child and how lit you were
Oh.
um, on that stage. That in some form, that experience is going to lead somewhere. You know what I mean? That lifetime experience of performer to, you know, you are a leader as well, to being an adult company member, to be a dance educator yourself, and now having your own podcast. It's all connected, you know, through dance, right? So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, especially coming from you. It means the world, Arnel. And just kind of taking everything and culminating all of your experiences, Arnel. I mean, you growing up, literally at the birth of hip hop, and playing such an integral role, and you even at the early age of being in college and starting spaces because you felt it was important to give back and to create more spaces for other people to enjoy, and taking your education further, even up to the doctorate level, and navigating through the wildness of postgrad and just hitting me now like 2001, 2002, like that was the year 9/11 happened. Like there's a lot of uncertainty in the country, and there was so many things, and you getting to where you're at now and being so connected and so integral in our community, and having such a rich experience in terms of life outside of the dance studio, not just within it. Most importantly, outside the dance studio. Arnel, what would you tell to your 13-year-old self?
oh man, my 13-year-old self. Um, I would tell myself that being different is such a great thing. Like, don't be scared of who you are. And even though you don't have all the answers, you have a very special place on this earth, and you will find your way. I would tell my 13-year-old self, because I at that time I was really scared of who I was. I was really afraid I wasn't enough, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to offer the world. You know? So I would just say you are worthy. Your space, your place in the world matters, you know, and you'll figure it out, you know. Yeah.
I love it, man. Arnel, it's always a pleasure, and I've been saying this a lot recently. Like energy matches energy, and just talking to you, I just feel uplifted and I feel a little more motivated or inspired, to continue to do great things. And that's why I love connecting with you and talking to you. So first, I just want to say thank you for making time to just share this wealth of knowledge that you've accumulated in your life. And hopefully at some point,
Yeah.
we can reconnect and get back on the podcast and see how things are going and just, talk a little bit more and dive into some other things. But I just want to say thank you for giving us your time and just sharing your narrative and, hopefully putting so many other people on as well.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, you know that I'm so proud of you, and you've always had a gift, and I've seen you like have spikes. It's always like when you believed in your gift that you had the spikes. You know what I mean? In terms of like creating something or joining a new team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's whenever you believed in yourself. So it makes my heart so happy to you find your voice here. Because I even love the name of this podcast. It's so great, because it's really like, of like minds, of bringing minds together to
Yeah.
create a positive difference. And that's a part of your genius as well. So of course I'm going to be here because I'm proud of you. I believe in you. And I think you're the type of person who's just going to continue to pay that forward as well, you know. So I love you, man, and
Love you
I'm
too.
excited to see where this goes. And yeah, I'm already a different person, and you're already a different person than you were in January 2020,
Very
right?
much. Very much.
Yeah. But it's a good thing. So in 2021, I feel like we're just gonna be better.
Mm, we are. This has been a huge test, but you know,
Mhm.
everything comes, it's up and downs, and we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there, and
Yep.
hopefully at that point we can reconnect. And who knows? Things will be different. Things could be very much the same, but we're gonna
Yeah.
reconnect and have a follow up. But again, thank you so much, Arnel. I have so much love and respect, and just I look up to you, and I just want to say thank you again, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
My pleasure, brother.
Appreciate it.